This lesson 14A is an update to our original lesson 14, which was the Sapphire Sharpen tool. And when we first did this series, that we were utilizing the Sapphire Sharpen tool, and as part of this series, Boris FX reviewed our tutorial. And they went and completely redid their Sharpen tool. It is amazing. What's nice about it is that the new Magic Sharpen tool is part of their standard Boris Continuum Complete package, so you don't have to run out and blow $1,000 now to get Sapphire Sharpen to get this tool. It's part of the package. Now, BCC Magic Sharp is once again down in the BCC Image Restoration Tools. It's right here on the Magic Sharp tool, but we're going to look at some of these advantages and what they did, and they were really fantastic. I know that Boris Yamzinski took a big interest in the development of this tool, that they rewrote their entire tool, including the suggestions that we had to make the tools more effective for the underwater environment. So let's go through and see why this tool is so great. What they did is they put in a slider, really easy to adjust the sharpen amount. You have what's called the sharpen threshold, which is going to be how big the pixels are. You have a sharpen radius. You have a noise suppression tool, but we're going to talk about why we don't recommend using the noise suppression, because it does put a blur back in it. You have detail ability to do your detail tuning, but the big thing is the channel. And what they did was they came and added all these different controls in here, and for the red, green, and blue, so that they had the same capability as GenArt Sharpen. So the first thing we're always going to do is reduce the blue to 0, because we understand that having that blue can wind up bringing noise back into the water spectrum. They have what's called a reduced grit. They have mixed with original, and then they have the pixel chooser. And we're going to talk about this, is that we're going to have two methodologies to control noise coming back into the water. One is going to be that have that blue sharpen level, reduce that blue sharpen level, but on a scene that we're looking at now, you wouldn't reduce that blue sharpen level because there is no water in the background. But we're going to use the blue sharpen tool and also the pixel chooser system, and therefore the matting system, as we've gone through before, to do a double protection to make sure that we're not bringing noise back into the water spectrum. So let's take a look at some of these scenes. I've already dragged the Magic Sharpen tool on to these individual particular scenes. The two major controls I use are the sharpen amount and the sharpen threshold. So within the sharpen amount, let's take a look at what the effects are when we wind up putting this sharpen tool on. And look at I want you to concentrate on all this detail, which is right here, because you're going to be blown away when we turn this tool on. So I'm going to click it on, and bam, look what happened. This detail that came out is just amazing. So let's turn around, turn it off, and turn it back on. It's just amazing, isn't it? Now, you got to be careful on this sharpen amount, because when you kind of ramp this thing up, you're going to get kind of a gritty type of look is going to come back, so you don't wind up amping it all the way up, and that gritty look really doesn't become apparent until after you wind up rendering your film. Yeah, because now all the frames are coming together, and therefore you don't want to ramp it up too high. You don't want to get too greedy with this tool. And by the way, this render takes a long time. It's doing millions of computational, but this is a must procedure. You have to do this sharpen amount. Let's take a look at it now. Off, on. Once again, look at it right in here. Off, on. I mean, there's just no comparison what this tool does. It's just an amazing tool. So I'm going to wind up reducing my fields here, and then we're going to look at some scenes that have blue in the background and what's going to be the effect when we wind up adjusting this blue sharpen amount down to a lesser amount, or reducing it to 0, as we talked about using the Magic Sharpen tool. Now, the Magic Sharpen tool doesn't have the pixel chooser and the matting system, and that's the big gigantic advantage over this tool. There's a couple things. One, it's a better sharpening tool. Two, it has the RGB red, green, and blue spectrums in it, and then they threw in the pixel chooser, which is what that I had discussions with Boris FX about when they developed this tool, was about having that matting system and making sure that we weren't going to bring noise back into the water. So we're going to move to the next scene, And let's go ahead and we'll take a look at the next scene that we're going to wind up applying the Magic Sharpen tool. And in here, you notice that we have a lot of blue in this particular scene, and therefore that we should see whether noise winds up coming back into the scene based on us using this particular tool. So let's turn around and start by looking at what's going to be the effect, and we're going to zoom in quite a lot, so we're just getting water here. I'm going to wind up zooming in to 200% for us to take a look at the scene, and let's concentrate on the water and see what happens when we wind up turning this tool off. Wow, did you see that? There's the noise. There's just a less amount of noise. When we turn this tool on, noise comes back in the water. Look at it right in this area right here. Let's do it again. We're going to turn it off. It takes a couple seconds. And then we're going to turn it back on. And noise comes back in the water. We talked about that issue before. So let's turn around and take a look at it. If we wind up reducing where we don't want it to sharpen in the blue spectrum. And we'll turn it back on. And there was a lesser amount of noise came back into the water, but some noise still came back in. So now let's turn around and apply the mat. So let's once again run through our procedures. Now what you want to do is I ramp this sharpen amount up to about, I think I used about a 50 around there. It gets me a pretty good amount. You have to ramp it up a little. And let's just turn our sharpen on and our sharpen off. And I want you to take a look at this particular area right here. So we're going to turn it off. And then we turn it on. Did you see what happens to this coral? Look at all the detail that comes out. Turn it off. Turn it on. But we're not bringing noise back into the water. And we have two things going on, is that we're not sharpening the blue spectrum. And I've already set up my mat already. So let's go in and view our chosen pixel. And I drew a mat using the blue spectrum. We've gone over these before. And then I used the invert mat command so that now my water is in black, which means it's not going to be affected. And the only pixels that are going to be affected are the pixels which are in white, as we've gone over these issues numerous times. And now let's turn around and ramp up our blue back to 100. Well, let's take a look at these fish, and let's kind of zoom in on here a little. Let's go to 200, and we'll kind of zoom in on some of these items, these fish, and we'll turn it off, and you notice how the film was blurred. We turn it on, and look what happens to that coral. Look what's happened to the fish. And of course, the better camcorder you have, the better it's going to turn out. That we were filming this with a JVC. It's not particularly a great camcorder, but we use it for 3D. And you can see the way that that particular detail starts coming out when we wind up using the tool. And you can see how blurred this coral is right in here when we're really zoomed in on it. We'll say go out, go, turn it off, turn it on, but we don't have noise coming back into the water because we have laid down that mat. And let me tell you guys, this is a huge improvement over the Sharpen tool as a result of them rewriting this entire tool. That matting system makes sure when you go to sharpen this footage, it's not going to bring it back into the water. So let's go ahead and take a look at another scene that we're going to come along here. And once again, we're just going to run through this particular item. We'll turn the sharpen back on, and you know, as I said, the sharpen amount and the sharpen threshold, usually I'll bump this up a little. Let's go to 40, and we'll turn it off, and then we'll turn it back on. Just look at the core right in here. We'll turn it off, and then we'll turn it back on. Now, when we're doing this, you're going to notice noise is coming back into the water spectrum here. You're going to notice the noise is coming back. And once again, then we can do a very quick draw the map. We'll say view our chosen pixels. Click on our pixel chooser. We're going to wind up using our channel. We're going to go to the blue again. And we have to turn it on. Let's go ahead and turn it on. There's our particular item. We've always learned that instead of the levels, we use the threshold. We'll draw our little line here by pulling our slider. We try to get a good delineation between the coral in the water. That looks pretty good right along here. We'll turn our pixel chooser back on the on, which was our standard procedure. And because we don't want to affect the water, we're going to invert that mat, because that's what we always did. So if we come once again back to views and chosen pixels, then the water's in black and the coral's in white. We want to sharpen the coral and some of the fish, but we don't want to bring noise or sharpen the water. So if we come back on the on, and let's take a look at our on and off again, and you guys can try this. And if I turn it off and I turn it on, I'm not getting any noises coming back in the water. So I highly recommend that we no longer use the Magic Sharpen tool. We no longer use the Sharpen tool from Genart Sapphire and got rid of that extra cost. We use the Sharpen tool from Boris Continuum Plate that went over our film and what our issues we were talking about, including the review that we did on the Magic Sharpen, and they went way beyond what Sapphire Sharpen did and rewrote this tool, and this tool is fantastic. And once again, this is a tool that you have to apply. I think we've gone over the same concepts. You're going to have to play around with your particular footage, of course, and you're going to have to play around with the sharpen amount, the sharpen threshold. If you ramp these too far up, you're going to wind up getting some grit in there, and that's not something you want to do. They have all sorts of mid-tones. It's just a much more comprehensive tool. So once again, because we use a lot of tools from Boris Continuum Complete, this is now a standard part of the package, and you no longer have to get the Sapphire Sharpen, and you wind up with a better tool. We're saving money, and this is the type of things that we do to work with software vendors to address these tool issues and try to make them better.